Hello, welcome back to Hazel Jane Tarot. Today I am filming a VR to Julie at Peekaboorose, and this is the Deck Delights and Deterrents hashtag. So I've been really enjoying watching the videos that people have been posting in this series and been thinking about, what is it that really puts me off a deck, and what is it that I really love about decks. And so I'm just going to talk through some of that with you today, and I'm going to start off with Deterrents, which was a little bit trickier to figure out how to film because obviously if something really puts me off a deck, I don't have them. But this is I'm sort of going to show you some things that are kind of like what I don't like, if that makes sense. So the first thing that really is a big deterrent for me with the deck when I see one online is if it features fairies, dragons, mermaids, kind of mythical creatures like that. So this is a deck, an oracle deck that I've had for a while, by Barbara Moore and Christina Scagliotti. That is called the Earth Wisdom Oracle, and it's got sort of a Celtic vibe to it. And I really like this one. And there's a deck that came out recently as well, a tarot deck called the Universal Celtic Tarot, that I really wanted to get because I felt like it was a sort of companion deck to this in terms of the art style. I think it's the same creator, the same artist anyway. And yes, when I looked at the photos of that deck, it contains dragons, there's a leprechaun on the picture of the fool, and I don't know, that just for me is a full no straight away. And I don't know what it is. I think maybe is it being Irish that having things featuring leprechauns, it just seems just way too cheesy and I can't take it seriously at all. So I just, that's a no for me. And I mean, there are some lovely decks with fairies, like particularly the Wisdom of the Hidden Realm is one that, or the Tarot of the Hidden Realm is one that I really like the look of. But again, I just can't really, the fairy vibe is just not really for me. I used to have the Oracle of the Hidden Realms by what's her name? Colette Baron Reid. And it was a gift and it was lovely, and the art was really nice. But again, in the guidebook, she's talking about leprechauns having messages for me, and, I don't want to be disrespectful to other people's belief systems, but for me, that's just not something I can take seriously. And similarly, I had the Oracle of the Mermaids, and that was also had, I never really I couldn't really jive with it as I was reading with it. And again, the guidebook, was talking about mermaids bringing me messages, and it's just not something that speaks to me in my sort of belief system. So I had to get rid of that. So I don't have either of those decks anymore. The Universal Celtic Tarot, funnily enough, is still on my wish list because I just feel like it would go so beautifully with this deck. But unfortunately, I feel like if I was to pull a card, I'm doing a tarot reading for myself, and I saw like a dragon, it would just throw me right out of the reading that I'm doing. Having said that, I am quite intrigued by the Tarot of the She, and I've been put off from buying that for a completely almost opposite reason. So people are nothing if not contradictory. And while I said, I don't really believe in fairies, and finding, them in tarot decks is a bit off-putting, I also, being Irish, kind of do believe in fairies in the sense of having respect for fairy forts, fairy rings, not crossing into things that are seen as fairy spaces or destroying fairy spaces. Like there's a sense of like the fae, and that sense is something that Irish people tend to have a kind of wary respect for. And so in a sense, I don't know if I really believe in that. I also don't want to mess with that, if that makes sense. So the Tower of the She, I feel like, is a deck that maybe takes that more seriously and maybe would be inviting that energy into my life in a way that I might not be fully comfortable with. So it's a deck that I might buy at some point, but I'm not sure about it. So that was a weird one to start with, so I hope I was able to explain clearly. The second thing that really puts me off a deck, and it's just a straight no immediately, is really dark imagery, or what to me seems like dark imagery. So anything that depicts kind of scary images, more in this sort of Halloween ghostly area. There's a deck out recently called The Murder of Crows, which is cool looking, but not for me, like, at all. And you know, even things like the Deviant Moon and all those decks by Patrick Valenza, I understand that, like, people love them, but it's not really for me at all. I find that it's a bit creepy, a wee bit, a bit. It would be off-putting for me working with the tarot. The deck that I have, though, that some people do find kind of creepy and that I really really love, is this. This is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot by oh dear, Liz Houston. Yes, by Liz Houston, and it's coming out in a mass market edition really soon, I think. This is independently published edition. That was the first tarot deck that I ever had shipped to me from America, and it is really beautiful. I mean, as you can see, it's really beautiful and kind of haunting, but there are, you know, elements in the imagery that are maybe things that I would find a little bit creepy, like there's skeletons, there's also some people where maybe a head, yes, the heads are missing, or, you know, that she's hollow and there's things inside her, which is a bit unsettling for me imagery wise. This is kind of on the edge of what I find that I can deal with. Like, but I mean, look at that, that's absolutely beautiful. But after I saw images of this one online, I couldn't stop looking at it, and I couldn't wait to get it. And when I first opened it, I did find it a wee bit creepy until I sort of got accustomed to it. But this is one of my favorite tarot decks. It reads amazingly well for me, and yeah, so I love this one. But in terms of things that are deterrents for me, dark imagery and sinister imagery is a straight no for me. Another thing that I really don't like in tarot decks and oracle decks too is animal decks. And I feel horrible saying it, like, because it makes it sound like, you know, oh, I don't like animals, which of course, you know, it's not that I hate animals, but I mean, I don't have pets. I've never really had pets, so I'm maybe not as much of an animal person as some people are, and I do love animals. This is one of the first oracle decks I got this really early on, but then realized that in terms of reading this kind of deck doesn't really speak to me. So whereas I have moved on some of the more kind of mythical creatures, fairy decks, I have kept this, and as you can see, it's really dinged up because I gave this to my daughter. So I have a little girl who's 2, and I gave this deck to her, and she kind of uses it like a flashcard deck, you know, for learning animals and learning the names of animals and so on. So it's still in the house, but it lives in her book box instead. And sometimes we'll like pull a card for fun, but obviously she doesn't look at it in that way. Like, she has boxes of flashcards for learning other names and for things as well. So animal decks, like, you know, even though the Wild Unknown, or, I mean, there's so many beautiful animal-based decks out there. But I just know for me, even though I sometimes feel tempted and I really like the imagery, I know it's not something I'm going to read with. So animal decks, I don't get. The other thing, another thing that kind of puts me off buying decks is decks that feature really modelly, slim, they're usually white, but like really modelly, slim women in photography. And this deck is one that I feel a bit ambivalent about, sort of for that reason. So this is the Divine Feminine Oracle, and it's by Megan Watterson. And I've read, or if you've read her book, Mary Magdalene Revealed, it's just amazing. Like, it's a fantastic book. And this deck, I think, in terms of concept and the book, is a good deck. But there's something about this sort of photography, and I find particularly with goddess decks, I do prefer goddesses depicted through paintings than photography. There's just something about it that doesn't really appeal. You know, they're all really beautiful, they're all real women. Obviously, like, beautiful slim women exist in the world, and that's fine, and they deserve to be depicted in oracle decks and tarot decks too. But there's just something about, you know, a deck full of beautiful modelly women who've been photographed that kind of puts me off. So this one is maybe a wee bit more diverse than some of the ones that I don't have because I haven't bought them. Like, one deck, for example, that I didn't buy kind of for that reason was the Chakra Wisdom Tarot. I have the Chakra Wisdom Oracle and I really enjoy it, but I was excited about the Chakra Wisdom Tarot deck, but when I saw the art online, it just didn't appeal to me at all. And I don't think, like, when I turn out a spread of cards and they all feature sort of slim white blonde, or not even blonde, but like slim white tall models, it doesn't really speak to me, and it's kind of a bit more jarring. And I suppose it's it maybe triggers negative thoughts for myself, and just sort of puts me off the reading. So this deck is not quite that, as I say, because I mean, this is a deck that I've bought and have kept. Although I still am not sure how I feel about the art in this deck. But there are lots of decks, oracle decks and some tarot decks that I've seen that have that sort of imagery that just doesn't really work for me. So the deterrent list, what else? One thing, and this is funny to choose this deck to depict this, because the Gaian Tarot is, if you've been following me or watched my channel before, you might know the Gaian Tarot is one of, if not my favourite tarot deck. However, in terms of cardstock, this edition, which is published by Schiffer, is kind of a lot of things that I don't like. Well, firstly, it comes in a 2-part box, which I hate. I much prefer all the cards in one pile in the box. So I don't really read with this because I have another edition of the deck. So when I first bought this, like, I was very excited because of the silver edging and so on. But when you see the other edition, which I'll maybe bring this back out in a minute to show you how they compare. But this is kind of shiny cardstock, so it's very laminated. I don't mind a bit of shiny, especially when it means that it fans. But this is kind of very shiny, and they're really big cards. If you see that in my hand, they're a bit too big to comfortably hold that way to shuffle. And then they have these horrendous extra blue borders. So the other edition has the white border but not the blue border, and those blue borders are just horrible. So this is a deck I keep to use, to intentionally choose cards and display them sometimes, because I don't want to get rid of this. It was my second only ever tarot deck, and it was kind of the deck that got me back into tarot, and I do love it for lots of reasons to do with the actual deck itself. But the cardstock there I don't really like. The other cardstock I'm not keen on is like that rose petal finish, the cards that are matte and really kind of sticky and don't fan or don't shuffle easily. I can't show you because I don't have any. One of the things that's a deterrent for me with the deck is Thoth-based decks, or the Thoth itself. I'm not really interested in learning that system. And pip decks, I've got one pip deck that I got recently, the Crystal Tarot, that I do want to give it a try, and see how I get on with it. But as a rule, generally, I don't really like pip decks, and I don't really buy Marseille-based decks or pip decks at all. So those are my deterrents. So there's quite a lot of things, really. I mean, I suppose with everybody, there's a lot of things that just aren't your taste, or that you just don't really like, and therefore, when you see other people raving about it, it's quite easy to just go, no, that's not for me. Then there's loads of things that are sort of in between, and when you see other people talking about the deck online, you're like, oh, maybe I would like that. And I do have some decks like that I've bought and I quite like, but wouldn't be like my delights. So moving on, Julie, talk not just about things you like, but like, what are your delights in a tarot deck? The Spirit Keeper's Tarot is delightful in many, many ways. I mean, it has the most beautiful box, and it speaks to a lot of the things that I will go through in my list of the things that are my deck delights. But one of the things in terms of cardstock, like, because I was just talking about the cardstock I don't like, the cardstock of the Spirit Keeper's Tarot is just, I mean, I think it's kind of perfect. Like, it's a totally matte cardstock. And, so it's lovely to hold. They're great size, they're tarot size, easy to shuffle that way. If you riffle shuffle, they're easy to hold that way too. They're gilded, and it's really nice gilding. You can see it's chipped a bit, but like, that doesn't bother me too much. Lovely gilding, but it's the sound they make. I think it's that combination of the pure matte cardstock and the metallic edging. I like decks that I can easily thumb through like this. if they start to stick together and I can't thumb through them, or the deck's too thick for me to easily thumb through, that does bother me a bit. I mean, it doesn't put me off completely, but it does bother me a bit. But this is just perfect. And, you know, the sound that it makes, it's sort of like a whispering sound as you shuffle it. Like, it's just perfect. So another deck recently that I found, I have a review on it recently, was the Manifesting Your Greatness Oracle deck that had very similar cardstock, even though like this is an expensive independent deck and Manifesting Your Greatness was, you know, a fairly affordable mass market oracle, but it had similar kind of cardstock and really cool blue edging, which was lovely. So in terms of cardstock, the Spirit Keepers Tarot is hard to beat, I think. So overall, the kinds of decks that I really enjoy, like that really delight me, tend to be particularly hand-painted decks. There's something about the painterly quality of a deck where you can kind of see the movement of the paint. Like, so this is the Painted Tarot by Sophie Mackay Knight. I've actually got a print of this one that I've ordered. Still haven't got it framed. Don't know where I'm going to hang it. But I mean, as well as being like really beautiful and colourful, which is one of the things that I'll come to that I like as well. But this has just got a real painterly quality, and you can see the paint in it. And I think I generally prefer painted decks to photographic decks anyway. But things where I can really see the artist's hand, as Tom Benjamin was said recently in a video I watched. He said he likes decks where you can see the hand of the artist, and that is for sure something that I really like. And also, I mean, it's not just painted decks that have this quality too, but I really like when you can tell the deck has been a real labour of love. This is the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant, and this is one of my absolute favourite decks. This just really delights me, to use the hashtag title. Like, this is just a delight. Almost every card is beautiful. You can see the hand of the artist, and they're painted, they're oil paintings, and it took years for her to paint all of these images. And I think there's something about just the physical labour of love that is physically painting 78 paintings in order to create a tarot deck. It just really blows me away, you know, when I look through something like this, and I can imagine the artist standing at her easel making this picture, which, you know, then I have like this gallery of her work right here in my hands. So there's something about, yeah, a painted deck and the sense of a labour of love, and that it takes a long time. I think, you know, with something like the Spirit Keepers Tarot, where Bell Wen shares her process, and you kind of get a buy-in to the process and the labour of love that it is to create the deck, that kind of, you know, adds into things that I like and enjoy as well. So you'll notice that most of the decks that are delights to me are Rider-Waite-Smith based decks. These are, again, not photographic decks, but not hand-painted decks either. So we're moving more into sort of digitally created art. But this is This Might Hurt Tarot, which has such beautiful edging. Talk about a deck delight. I love that holographic edging. So I don't really read with the Rider-Waite-Smith itself. I have a copy of the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial Edition. I use it as a base for sort of studying tarot, because most of the decks I have are based on that system. And I really enjoy decks, most of these decks are based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system. And that's sort of a big part of the deck delights for me. But I do like decks like This Might Hurt and Modern Witch, which are very close to the original Pixies drawings in terms of their composition and their content, but they're updated in their kind of the models or the people in the images, and they're much more diverse in terms of depicting a mix of males and females, people of different racial backgrounds, people of different ages, different abilities. You know, that really is an important thing for me, and I do find it a delight to look through a deck and see a bit more of the true diversity of the world around me depicted, like the I think I kind of breezed past earlier, like that Two of Cups. I love that Two of Cups. And I mean, just color-wise, the tones of this deck are just gorgeous. Anyway, sorry, I could spend too long looking at one deck. But that's the This Might Hurt Tarot and the Modern Witch Tarot in a very similar way. You know, this is even more closely based on the exact imagery of the Rider-Waite-Smith, but it is updated with featuring only women in this case, and mostly young, but people of different racial backgrounds and sort of different, just a broad range of sort of female presenting people, different clothing, different styles. I've done a full review on this one recently. I just love everything about this. This deck delights me in many ways, not least the beautiful fanning action you can get with the cards and the lovely backs. But just in terms of a general things that delight me in a tarot deck, decks that are Rider-Waite-Smith based and are but more updated and more diverse, is something that I really, really love. So another deck that falls into that category of being a sort of more contemporary and diverse deck is the Numinous Tarot. And this is a deck that delights me in many ways. And right on top there is one of my favourite cards in the entire deck. That Nine of Bells is so powerful. And the deck works with reversed meanings as well. This deck is independently produced by Cedar McLeod. You can follow them at Numinous Spirit online. And they've an Oracle deck coming out soon. I can't wait to get my hands on that as well. But, you know, the Numinous Tarot is just a fantastically diverse, contemporary reimagining of the Rider-Waite-Smith type meanings. But another thing that delights me in a tarot deck, and this deck totally does that, is a deck that has a really great book. And the Numinous Tarot has a great book. And you can see that Cedar has really thought out sort of the vision of the deck, you know, because it's particularly that this deck is designed for LGBT people or LGBTQ plus people, and it focuses a lot on sort of the inner journey and the community aspects of some of these cards, so bringing in elements of like activism and community support and mental health, and, you know, just loads of different very contemporary ways of interpreting and applying the meanings of these archetypes in the tarot. And this book has really educated me in terms of my own understanding of tarot and how, you know, and I kind of have this out on my bookcase as just a core tarot book that I would refer to. Another book that is the same is this book from the Gaian Tarot. The Gaian Tarot obviously has a slightly different angle. It's more looking at, you know, a lot of community as well, but also thinking about, you know, the earth and the environment and engagement with that. I mean, not only is it a lovely colour guidebook, but it's just the depth of thought that has gone into the creation of this system, which is Rider-Waite-Smith based, but then slightly off to the side. Like, for example, here the Hierophant is the teacher. And then when the creator, and I think one of the crucial things for both of these decks is the creator of the art and the writer of the guidebook is the same person, and there's a real coherence to the vision of the deck in as a whole, and it's not something that has been churned out you know, quickly, or it's something that has a real depth of thought to it, and you can really feel that in the art, and you can also see that in the book, which really develops their system and explains their system really clearly. So that is something that really delights me. And I guess when we're talking about the Gaian Tarot, I should probably show you a bit more of it, because in terms of deck delights, this really is one of my absolute favourites for many reasons. So this is the Llewellyn edition, and I managed to come across this by total chance in a shop. that was just had it on the shelf. I mean, and this is out of print and is very, very expensive if you wanted to get it. So I was so lucky. I didn't spend a ridiculous amount of money on this. It was just for sale in the shop at kind of shop prices. So this deck brings together so many of the things that I love in a tarot deck. The cards are matte, they shuffle really easily, the depictions are modern, they contain people. I think that's a really crucial thing for me, where decks depict people. This card is one of my favorites because this couple, even though they don't really look like they look like me and my partner, even though they don't really, like, he has long blonde hair and I have dark hair, and we don't look unlike that couple, shall we say. And yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful deck. It's quite diverse in terms of the people depicted. The images are just gorgeous. I mean, look at that. I just want to step into that card and I want to feel that way. It's just so beautiful. So yes, this deck, the Gaian Tarot, is just one of my favorites. I haven't used it in such a long time because I've brought in so many new decks recently, and I've been trying to work with those. But yeah, I mean, it's fabulous, the Gaian Tarot. And Joanna Powell Colbert, the creator, I have subscribed to her mailing list and follow her on Instagram, and she's so gracious. She's commented on some of the photos I've posted of her deck, and I mean, this just feels lovely. I love everything about the Gaian Tarot. So, but yes, that was to sort of illustrate two things, I guess, that decks. One of the things that delights me in a deck is really good book and depictions of people. And another deck that depicts, I mean, all of these decks really have depicted people, but another one that is a real delight that depicts people is the Lightseers Tarot. It's a bit, the cardstock is a wee bit clumpy for me in terms of it being thick and a wee bit hard to handle. This is the independent edition. But it depicts people, it's modern, it's quite diverse, and it's based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system, and it's really colourful, and that's another thing that I really love in a deck, as I'm sure you can see from the ones that I've shown you so far, is colourful decks that are always a winner for me. Colourful decks that depict people, usually. So the Lightseers Tarot, I love. And just a couple of other things. If you've been with me this long, thank you for watching. A couple of other things that are delightful, like this oracle deck I just got recently, the Seasons of the Witch Sign Oracle. It has those amazing backs, which I love, but look at the red edging. So I really, really love, I mean, when I took it out of the box and saw the red edging, I'm like, oh, wow. So there's something about, like, I love gilt edging generally, or coloured edging, like the Lightseers Tarot has that cool kind of teal coloured edging. But something like that, like the red metallic edging or the blue metallic edging on the Manifesting Your Greatness Oracle, it's just a really nice surprise and just a little extra delight to add to my enjoyment of the deck. And one last thing, I think is something that is a deck delight for me, and this is quite a new deck, the Story Medicine Tarot. I'm not new to the world, but new to me. It's by Jessica Zinchuk, and this deck, I suppose it holds two places in terms of things that I delight in a tarot deck. It's something that's quite different in terms of its approach to the tarot system, and I have brought a few decks in recently that are a bit like that, sort of maybe not so closely related to Rider-Waite-Smith, although still not Thoth or Pip decks, but just their sort of own version of the tarot. And that's something that I'm becoming increasingly intrigued by. And also, this is a deck that is very much about the female body and living in a female body and sort of menstruation and childbirth. And I guess I just enjoy, and I'm kind of, there's something sort of quite confronting about this imagery, but yet really honest in its depiction of, like, look at that, of womanhood, not in a it's not dressed up and prettified. It's really in your face and honest, and yeah, there's something really powerful about this that I am definitely very drawn to at the moment. And there's a new deck out just recently by Jessica Zinchuk, Animal Woman Tarot, which is another one in this sort of story medicine series that I am really looking carefully at, because it's something that I think that might delight me as well. So I mean, I have other decks that I really love, and I sort of almost felt bad doing this video, like I was going to leave somebody out. And you know, no criticism or disservice to, you know, the kinds of decks that I said were my deterrents, because, you know, isn't that the wonderful thing about tarot, that there's something for everybody. And you know, what's some really off-putting for me can be really attractive and wonderful for somebody else. And you know, that's the whole beauty of it. But you know, we all have our own taste and things that we're drawn to. So for me, the delights are, you know, easy to shuffle, easy to fan, cardstock, hand painted or really colourful painterly depictions of people based on the Rider-Waite-Smith system, with a really great guidebook. I'm there for that. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to Julie at Peekaboorose for making such a great hashtag. And yeah, thanks for watching. And if you like this and you'd like to see more tarot content from me, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you again soon.